Hi guys, the night air is warm beside the Nile. A gentle breeze moves across the dark water. Small ripples drift quietly beneath a sky filled with distant stars. Along the riverbanks, the sounds of the day have almost disappeared. The voices of merchants have faded. The footsteps of workers have slowed. The calls of fishermen have become rare and scattered. Now there is only the soft movement of water and the quiet breathing of a sleeping land. Ancient Egypt rests beneath the moon. Far from the grand temples and the stone monuments that would one day survive for thousands of years, ordinary people sleep inside simple mud brick homes. Families lie on woven mats. Some sleep beneath thin linen coverings. Others rest in open courtyards where the night air offers relief from the heat that filled the day. Children sleep beside their parents. Dogs curl up near doorways. Somewhere in the darkness, a donkey shifts its weight and settles again. The night feels long and peaceful. Tomorrow will bring another day of work. Another day of carrying water. Another day of baking bread. Another day of fishing, farming, building, writing, selling, sweeping, repairing, cooking, and resting. The great story of ancient Egypt was not only written by kings and rulers. It was also written by hands. Millions of ordinary hands. Hands that planted seeds. Hands that shaped clay. Hands that pulled fishing nets from the Nile. Hands that mixed grain into dough. Hands that built homes for growing families. Most people who lived in ancient Egypt would never become famous. Their names would not be carved into monuments. Their faces would not be remembered in paintings for future generations. Yet their lives mattered deeply. Without them, Egypt could not exist. Tonight, as the river flows quietly through the darkness, we step softly into their world. We begin before sunrise. Long before the heat arrives. Long before the dusty roads fill with travelers. Long before workshops awaken. The horizon is still dark when the first people begin to stir. A woman wakes and sits quietly for a moment. The house is silent. The air is cool compared to what it will become later. She rises carefully so she does not wake the younger children sleeping nearby. Outside, the eastern sky holds the faintest hint of gray. The day is approaching. Ancient Egypt wakes early. The climate encourages it. Work is easier before the strongest heat arrives. Many laborers begin their days while the world is still soft and dim. Soon other homes begin to wake as well. A door opens. A cough sounds in the distance. Someone gathers kindling. Someone else stretches tired muscles after a short night of sleep. The village slowly comes alive. In one home, grain is already being prepared. Bread is one of the most important foods in Egypt. Almost everyone eats it. Rich or poor, bread appears on countless tables every day. The process begins long before a loaf reaches a hungry family. Grain must be harvested, dried, stored, ground into flour, mixed into dough, baked beside glowing heat. This morning, a woman kneels beside a grinding stone. The task is familiar. She has done it countless times. She places grain onto the stone surface and begins moving another stone across it. Slowly. Steadily. Again and again. The work is demanding. It places strain on the back, shoulders, and arms. But it must be done. The household depends on it. As the sky grows brighter, the sound of grinding stones becomes common throughout the settlement. Many homes produce the same quiet rhythm. Stone against grain. Stone against stone. A sound heard across Egypt for generations. Nearby, a young boy rubs sleep from his eyes. Soon he will help carry water. His father is already awake. The man steps outside and looks toward the growing light. Today will be another long day in the fields. The Nile has shaped every part of Egyptian life. Its waters make farming possible. Its annual floods bring fertile soil. Its steady presence allows villages and towns to survive beside lands that would otherwise be harsh and dry. For many Egyptians, life follows the rhythms of the river. Its behavior influences planting, harvesting, travel, trade, daily routines. The father begins walking toward the fields with other workers. Sandals press into dusty ground. Voices remain low. Many are still waking. The morning air feels pleasant. For now, the sun has not yet begun its climb. Birds move among reeds near the water. Small boats drift quietly at their moorings. Everything feels calm. The fields stretch outward beside the Nile. Here, ordinary workers spend much of their lives. Farming requires patience. It requires attention. It requires effort repeated day after day. The work changes with the seasons, but there is always something to do. Seeds must be planted. Canals must be maintained. Tools must be repaired. Crops must be watched carefully. The workers arrive and begin. Some carry simple wooden tools. Others guide animals used in agricultural labor. Dust rises gently around their feet. The first sunlight touches the land. Golden light spreads across fields and riverbanks. The day has begun. Hours pass. The sun climbs higher. Its warmth grows stronger. Workers continue their tasks. Sweat appears on brows. Clothing becomes damp. The pace remains steady. There is little choice. Food depends on successful harvests. Families depend on food. Entire communities depend on food. The labor of ordinary farmers supports everyone around them. Even scribes and officials rely upon the harvest. Even priests depend upon the harvest. Even rulers depend upon the harvest. The farmer's work may seem simple, but it forms the foundation of the kingdom. As the morning advances, activity increases along the Nile. Fishermen prepare their nets. Boats move across the water. Some vessels carry goods. Others carry people. The river serves as a road through Egypt. Traveling by boat is often easier than crossing long distances by land. A fisherman stands near the edge of the water. His net rests over one shoulder. The Nile glimmers beneath the growing sunlight. He knows these waters well. He understands the currents. He watches the movements of fish. He notices changes that others might miss. His livelihood depends upon observation. Patience becomes one of his greatest skills. He pushes his boat gently away from shore. The vessel rocks softly. Water laps against wood. Soon he is drifting through the morning light. Nearby, reeds sway in the breeze. Birds rise into the sky. The fisherman casts his net. Then waits. Much of life in ancient Egypt involves waiting. Waiting for crops. Waiting for floods. Waiting for bread to bake. Waiting for fish to gather. Waiting for cooler evening air. The fisherman understands this rhythm. The river teaches patience. Back in the village, workshops are becoming busy. Craftsmen begin their daily labor. A potter shapes clay. A carpenter smooths wood. A weaver works with linen. The sounds of production fill narrow streets. Hands remain busy throughout the day. The potter sits before a wheel. Clay responds to gentle pressure. Slowly a vessel emerges. A jar. A bowl. A storage container. Objects that may appear ordinary. Yet every household depends upon them. Water must be stored. Grain must be protected. Food must be prepared. Simple items play important roles in everyday survival. The potter understands this. His work may never attract great attention, but people rely upon it. Across the settlement, a scribe begins his morning. Not everyone can read and write. Literacy requires training. Years of learning. Practice. Discipline. The scribe belongs to a respected profession. His hands are softer than those of many laborers. His tools are different. Instead of farming equipment or fishing nets, he carries writing materials. He records information. Tracks supplies. Maintains records. Creates documents. His work supports administration and organization. Yet even he begins his day in familiar ways. He wakes. He eats. He walks dusty roads. He feels the heat. He grows tired. Like everyone else, he belongs to the ordinary rhythms of life. As the sun reaches higher positions in the sky, shadows become shorter. Heat spreads across the land. The coolness of morning fades completely. Stone walls grow warm. Dusty roads shimmer beneath sunlight. Workers feel the weight of the day. Some pause briefly to drink water. Others seek moments of shade. A tree becomes valuable. A wall becomes valuable. Any shelter from direct sunlight is welcomed. The heat of Egypt is not merely a background detail. It shapes behavior. It shapes schedules. It shapes expectations. People learn to live alongside it, to respect it, to endure it. A woman carrying water balances a container carefully. The journey requires effort. Water is essential. Households need it constantly. For cooking, cleaning, drinking, preparing food. Daily life revolves around necessities that must never be ignored. She walks steadily through the settlement. The container is heavy. The road is dusty. Yet this task is familiar. Thousands of similar journeys happen every day across Egypt. The movement of ordinary people performing ordinary work creates the true heartbeat of the civilization. Not monuments. Not palaces. But routines. Simple routines repeated across generations. The afternoon slowly approaches. The sun remains strong. Voices become quieter. Movement slows. Even animals seek relief from the heat. The day feels heavy now. Workers continue, but fatigue settles gently onto shoulders and backs. Many people in ancient Egypt know exhaustion well. Physical labor dominates daily life. Rest is valuable. Shade is valuable. Cool water is valuable. Small comforts matter. A brief breeze can feel like a gift. A moment beneath a shaded roof can feel deeply satisfying. As the afternoon stretches onward, the Nile continues its endless journey through the land. Unhurried. Steady. Ancient. The river watches generations come and go. Children grow into adults. Adults grow old. Families change. Villages expand. Yet the water keeps flowing. Always moving northward. Always connecting communities. Always supporting life. And as the sunlight slowly begins its long descent toward evening, workers everywhere begin thinking of home. Of food. Of rest. Of the quiet hours waiting beyond the heat of the day. The road back to the village feels familiar beneath tired feet. Dust rises softly with each step. The air remains warm, but the harsh edge of afternoon has begun to fade. Shadows lengthen little by little. And across ancient Egypt, countless ordinary people continue their journey toward another peaceful night beside the river. The lowering sun changes the color of everything. Fields that seemed bright and harsh beneath midday light now glow with softer shades of gold. The river reflects long ribbons of orange and pale yellow. Palm trees cast stretched shadows across dusty ground. The air remains warm, but the most difficult heat has begun to loosen its grip. For many workers, this is one of the most welcome times of day. The body feels tired. The muscles ache. Hands are rough from labor. Yet evening brings relief. A farmer walks slowly along a narrow path beside an irrigation canal. The water moves quietly beside him. His shoulders are heavy after hours of work beneath the sun. Dust clings to his sandals. His linen clothing carries traces of sweat and soil. He is not alone. Other workers make the same journey. Some walk in small groups. Some travel in silence. Some exchange a few quiet words about crops, family members, or plans for tomorrow. Nobody moves very quickly. There is no need. The work of the day is nearly done. Ahead, the village waits. Thin trails of smoke rise from cooking fires. Children's voices drip through the evening air. Dogs wander between homes. Donkeys stand patiently near walls and storage areas. The settlement seems to breathe more slowly than it did during the busy hours of morning. As people return home, familiar routines begin. One woman kneels beside a low work surface and prepares the evening meal. Bread remains at the center of daily life. The smell of baking dough drifts into the air. Nearby, onions are prepared. A small amount of fish may be added if the household has been fortunate. Perhaps there are beans. Perhaps some vegetables grown nearby. The meal is simple. Most meals are. Yet after a day of labor, even simple food feels satisfying. The woman works carefully. She has prepared countless meals over the years. Her hands know the motions almost without thought. Mixing. Shaping. Tending the heat. Watching. Waiting. Cooking in ancient Egypt requires effort. There are no quick meals. Every stage demands time and energy. Fuel must be gathered. Ingredients must be prepared. Water must be carried. Nothing arrives easily. As the food cooks, family members gradually gather. A young girl helps arrange containers. An older boy returns after assisting with livestock. An elderly relative sits nearby and enjoys the cooler air. The family settles into the familiar rhythm of evening. Across Egypt, scenes much like this unfold again and again. Thousands of homes. Thousands of cooking fires. Thousands of families preparing for another night. The great monuments of Egypt may one day draw attention from distant generations. But for the people living here now, family meals hold far greater importance. These moments offer comfort. They offer connection. They offer rest after long hours of effort. The smell of bread spreads through narrow streets. The scent mingles with smoke, dust, and the faint smell of river water carried by the breeze. It is the smell of ordinary life. Nearby, a fisherman returns from the Nile. His boat glides gently toward shore. The water is calmer now. Evening often brings a sense of stillness to the river. The fisherman secures his vessel and examines the day's catch. Some days are better than others. The river can be generous. It can also be unpredictable. But today there is enough. Enough to help support the household. Enough to bring a small sense of satisfaction. He lifts baskets carefully and begins walking toward home. The path is familiar. His feet know every turn. He has traveled this route hundreds of times. Perhaps thousands. Routine shapes much of human life. In ancient Egypt, routine provides stability. The seasons change. The river rises and falls. Children grow older. Yet daily patterns continue. Wake before sunrise. Work. Eat. Rest. Sleep. Then begin again. For many people, life follows these rhythms for decades. As darkness slowly approaches, activity continues inside workshops. Not every worker has returned home. Some craftsmen use the remaining daylight to finish tasks. A carpenter sits near the entrance of his workspace. Wood shavings gather around his feet. His hands move slowly and deliberately. The fading sunlight helps him see details that would be difficult to manage later by lamplight. Wood is valuable. Tools must be made carefully. Furniture requires skill. Storage chests, stools, and household items all depend upon the labor of craftsmen. The carpenter understands his materials well. He notices small imperfections. He feels texture beneath his fingers. He works patiently. The pace of his labor mirrors the pace of the world around him. Nothing here is rushed. Nearby, a potter examines newly formed vessels. Rows of clay containers wait quietly. Some are drying. Some are ready for firing. Each one represents hours of labor. Each one may eventually find a place inside a home. A family may store grain within it. A merchant may transport goods. A traveler may carry water. Simple objects become part of countless lives. The potter may never meet the people who use his work. Yet he contributes to their daily existence all the same. The evening light grows softer. Birds settle among reeds. The sky changes color once more. Orange gives way to deeper shades. The first hints of night appear overhead. Children notice it before many adults do. They pause from games and look upward. Stars begin appearing one by one. The ancient sky reveals itself. Far from modern lights, the heavens seem vast. The stars shine brightly above Egypt. People notice them. Farmers notice them. Fishermen notice them. Travelers notice them. Children notice them. The sky forms a familiar companion throughout life. Night after night. Year after year. Generation after generation. An elderly man sits outside his home. The evening breeze brushes gently against his face. His working years are largely behind him now. His body carries memories of labor. His hands show signs of decades spent working beneath the sun. His back no longer moves as easily as it once did. Yet there is comfort in the evening. He watches younger workers returning home. He listens to distant voices. He hears laughter drifting through the settlement. Life continues around him. Perhaps he remembers his own younger days. Perhaps he recalls long hours in the fields. Perhaps he remembers carrying heavy loads or working beside the river. Memory often arrives quietly during evening hours. The slowing pace of the day creates space for reflection. As darkness deepens, oil lamps begin appearing inside homes. Small points of warm light glow through doorways and windows. Their illumination is gentle, soft, limited. The darkness remains powerful. Night belongs to shadows. The lamp simply creates small islands of comfort within it. Inside one home, family members sit together while finishing their meal. Conversation is calm. There is no hurry. The hardest work of the day is finished. Tomorrow's responsibilities can wait until morning. For now there is food. There is shelter. There is companionship. These things matter. In another home, a mother cares for a child who has been feeling unwell. Illness is a familiar part of ancient life. People face injuries, fevers, aches, fatigue. Many treatments exist, though not all are effective. Families do what they can. They rely on experience, on remedies passed from one generation to the next, on hope, on patience. The mother places a hand gently upon the child's forehead. Outside, the village remains peaceful. Life continues around moments of sickness just as it continues around moments of health. The rhythms of daily existence rarely stop. As night settles fully across the landscape, sounds begin to change. The busy noise of work disappears. Workshops grow quiet. Fields stand empty. The roads carry fewer travelers. Instead, softer sounds emerge. The chirping of insects. The distant call of birds. The gentle movement of water. The occasional murmur of conversation. The night possesses its own music. A slow music. A quiet music. A music suited to rest. Near the Nile, a young man sits beside the riverbank. The day's heat still lingers in the earth beneath him. The water reflects moonlight. Tiny ripples catch silver light and release it again. He watches silently. There is something calming about the river at night. Its movement never stops. Yet it never seems hurried. The Nile flows with patience. Its waters have moved through this land for longer than anyone can remember. Long before his birth. Long before his parents' birth. Long before the oldest stories told by village elders. The river simply continues. Nearby, reeds rustle softly. A fish breaks the surface for a moment before disappearing again. The night feels endless. Peaceful. Protective. Eventually the young man rises and returns home. Many others are already preparing for sleep. A woman folds simple linens. A father secures a doorway. Children settle onto woven mats. The lamps burn lower. Voices become quieter. One by one, homes surrender themselves to sleep. The sleeping arrangements of ordinary Egyptians are often modest. Few enjoy great luxury. Most households rely on simple bedding. Mats woven from plant fibers. Basic supports. Light coverings. Yet after a day of hard labor, comfort often comes less from the bed itself and more from the chance to rest. Tired muscles welcome stillness. Heavy eyelids close easily. The body understands what it needs. Across the village, breathing slows. The settlement grows increasingly silent. The stars continue their journey overhead. Moonlight washes softly across walls of mud brick. Palm leaves sway gently in the darkness. The air feels cooler now. More forgiving. More kind. A dog sleeps beside a doorway. A donkey rests nearby. Even the animals seem grateful for the end of the day. Inside homes, dreams begin. Some dream of river journeys. Some dream of family. Some dream of tomorrow's work. Others simply drift into deep sleep without memory. Night holds them all. And while they sleep, the Nile continues flowing beside them. Steady. Quiet. Ancient. Its waters pass villages and fields. They slip past fishing boats resting at their moorings. They glide beside reeds and riverbanks. They carry the reflections of stars. The river keeps watch through the darkness. Hours pass. The village sleeps. The workshops remain still. The roads stand empty. The fields rest beneath moonlight. And little by little, somewhere beyond the horizon, another morning begins preparing itself. Not yet. Not for some time. But eventually the eastern sky will brighten again. Another day of ordinary work will arrive. Another day of bread making. Another day of fishing. Another day of carrying water. Another day of labor beneath the Egyptian sun. For now, though, the land remains wrapped in darkness and calm. The people of ancient Egypt sleep peacefully beside the river that shapes their lives. And the quiet night stretches gently onward. The deepest hours of the night settle softly across the Nile Valley. Most homes are silent now. The last conversations have faded. The cooking fires have cooled into faint beds of glowing embers. The workshops stand empty beneath the stars. Only the river continues its endless movement through the darkness. The Nile does not sleep. Its waters flow quietly past villages, farms, temples, and fields. Long before any person wakes, the river is already continuing its ancient journey. Moonlight rests upon its surface. Gentle ripples drift toward distant shores. The night air carries the scent of damp reeds and earth. Somewhere along the riverbank, a fisherman sleeping beside his boat shifts beneath a linen covering. Nearby, another family sleeps in an open courtyard where the cooler air can move freely around them. The heat of the previous day has finally disappeared. The darkness feels calm. Protective. Still. These quiet hours often pass unnoticed in history. Kings leave records. Officials leave documents. Monuments survive. Yet the sleeping hours of ordinary people rarely appear in written accounts. Still, they mattered. Rest was essential. The work of ancient Egypt demanded strong bodies. A farmer could not spend long days in the fields without sleep. A builder could not carry heavy stone without sleep. A baker could not rise before dawn without sleep. Night restored what the day had taken. As the stars slowly wheel overhead, the village remains peaceful. Then, little by little, the darkness begins to change. The shift is almost impossible to notice at first. The horizon softens. The black sky becomes slightly lighter. A faint gray line appears in the east. Morning approaches once more. Ancient Egypt begins waking before the sun itself appears. A rooster calls somewhere in the distance. A dog lifts its head. A woman opens her eyes and listens to the quiet house around her. The day is beginning. She rises carefully. The floor beneath her feet feels cool. For a few moments she stands silently, adjusting to wakefulness. Then she begins preparing for another day. Nearby, a clay jar holds water gathered the previous evening. The household will need more before long. Water disappears quickly in daily life. People drink it, cook with it, wash with it. Animals require it. Every day begins and ends with thoughts of water. Outside, the village gradually stirs. A few doorways open. Soft footsteps appear along narrow paths. The eastern sky brightens further. Birds begin their morning calls. The world slowly returns. There is no sudden awakening. No dramatic beginning. Life unfolds gently. One person rises. Then another. Then another. The settlement slowly fills with movement. A young boy carries a basket larger than he would prefer. He is still growing. His arms tire easily. Yet helping the family is part of life. Children often contribute from an early age. They learn through observation. Through practice. Through repetition, a father demonstrates how to repair a tool. A mother teaches food preparation. Older siblings guide younger ones. Knowledge passes naturally from one generation to the next. Many lessons are never written down. They exist in memory, in habit, in daily work. The boy walks beside his father toward a storage area. The morning air feels pleasant. The sun has not yet become harsh. This is one of the most comfortable moments of the entire day. The village seems fresh and renewed. Yesterday's fatigue has faded somewhat. Today's challenges have not yet arrived. For a short while, the world feels balanced. Nearby, bread preparation begins once again. The rhythm of daily life returns exactly where it paused the previous evening. Grinding grain remains one of the most important household tasks. Women kneel beside grinding stones. Hands begin moving. The familiar sound spreads through the settlement. Stone against grain. Stone against stone. A slow, steady rhythm. For centuries, mornings in Egypt begin with these sounds. The work is repetitive, demanding, often exhausting. Yet it is necessary. Without flour there is no bread. Without bread there is hunger. The women continue patiently. Tiny particles of grain gather around the work area. Muscles slowly warm as the day begins. Children move around them. Neighbors exchange greetings. The village becomes fully awake. Not far away, a baker tends an oven. Heat already rises from the opening. Soon fresh bread will emerge. The smell spreads through nearby streets. Warm, earthy, comforting. Even before breakfast is served, people recognize the scent. It promises nourishment. It promises energy for the long hours ahead. Across the settlement, workers prepare for many different kinds of labor. Some head toward fields. Others move toward workshops. Some prepare boats. Others gather supplies for travel. Ancient Egypt contains many occupations. Most are connected in some way. The farmer grows grain. The miller prepares flour. The baker makes bread. The merchant transports goods. The potter creates storage containers. The carpenter builds tools. Each depends upon the work of others. The community functions because countless people perform their roles each day. A merchant steps onto a dusty road leading toward a larger town. His donkey carries goods secured in woven bundles. The journey may take several hours. Travel requires patience. Roads are often uneven. The sun will become intense later. Still, trade must continue. Goods move constantly through Egypt. Grain, linen, fish, pottery, tools, wood, stone. The merchant adjusts his load and begins walking. Dust rises beneath his sandals. The road stretches ahead. He has traveled it many times before. As the sun climbs higher, activity increases along the river. Boatmen prepare vessels. Fishermen organize nets. Children watch from shorelines. The Nile serves as a source of food, transportation, and water. Its importance cannot be overstated. Without the river, much of Egypt would be empty desert. With the river, life flourishes. A fisherman examines a net damaged during recent use. Several sections require repair. He sits beside his boat and begins careful work. The task demands patience more than strength. His fingers move slowly through the fibers. Repairing equipment occupies a surprising amount of time in ancient life. Tools wear out. Containers crack. Ropes fray. Clothing tears. Nothing lasts forever. Maintenance becomes part of everyday existence. Hours spent repairing objects prevent greater problems later. The fisherman understands this well. A broken net can mean lost opportunities, lost food, lost income. He continues his work while the morning unfolds around him. Nearby, reeds sway gently. The river glitters beneath sunlight. Boats drift past. The scene feels peaceful despite its constant activity. Elsewhere, in a larger settlement, scribes have begun their duties. Records must be maintained. Supplies counted. Transactions documented. A young apprentice studies beside an experienced scribe. Learning to write requires dedication. The symbols must be memorized. The techniques practiced repeatedly. Mistakes corrected. Progress often comes slowly. The apprentice concentrates carefully. His teacher watches. Patience remains essential. Knowledge takes time to acquire. Many years may pass before the apprentice becomes fully skilled. Yet education offers opportunities unavailable to many others. The work is demanding in its own way. Long hours of concentration replace long hours of physical labor. Still, every occupation carries challenges. As morning advances, sunlight floods the countryside. Fields shimmer beneath growing heat. Workers continue planting, digging, carrying, and repairing. The day gradually becomes more difficult. Sweat appears. Clothing clings to skin. The cool comfort of dawn becomes a distant memory. Heat dominates the landscape once more. People adapt as best they can. A farmer pauses briefly beneath a tree. The shade is small. Several workers share it. For a few minutes they rest. Water is passed between them. Conversation remains quiet. Energy must be conserved. Soon they return to work. The fields require attention. Crops do not wait. The cycle of agriculture continues. Season after season. Year after year. Generation after generation. Many Egyptians spend their entire lives connected to the land. They learn the behavior of soil, the timing of planting, the arrival of floods, the signs of changing seasons. Their knowledge comes from observation accumulated across countless years. Parents teach children. Grandparents teach grandchildren. Experience becomes wisdom. At midday, the sun stands high overhead. The brightness feels overwhelming. Stone walls radiate heat. Open ground seems to shimmer. Even animals seek shelter whenever possible. The entire landscape appears to slow. People continue working, but movement becomes more deliberate. Every task requires additional effort. A woman carrying water feels the weight of both the container and the temperature. Each step seems heavier than before. Yet she continues. The household needs water. Responsibilities remain. Many ordinary tasks in ancient Egypt involve carrying. Carrying grain. Carrying tools. Carrying clay. Carrying baskets. Carrying water. The human body serves as one of the most important sources of power available. Muscles accomplish what machines will one day do elsewhere. This reality shapes daily life. It shapes architecture. It shapes work. It shapes fatigue. By afternoon, tiredness settles across the land. People feel it in their shoulders, their backs, their legs, their hands. Work continues nonetheless. The rhythm of labor rarely stops entirely. The civilization depends upon millions of individual efforts woven together. A single worker may seem unimportant. Yet every task contributes something. Every repaired tool. Every harvested bundle of grain. Every baked loaf of bread. Every fishing net cast into the river. The greatness of Egypt rests upon ordinary people doing ordinary work. Most never receive recognition. Most leave little trace behind. Yet they remain essential. As the afternoon light slowly begins to soften once more, workers glance toward the horizon. Evening is still some distance away. But eventually it will come. The heat will fade. Families will gather. Meals will be prepared. The village will fill once again with the comforting sounds of home. For now, though, the day continues beneath the watchful sun. The Nile flows quietly nearby. The fields stretch toward the horizon. Dust drifts through warm air. And throughout ancient Egypt, countless ordinary lives continue their steady, patient rhythm beside the river that sustains them all. The afternoon settles heavily across the Nile Valley. The sun still hangs above the land, though it has begun its slow journey downward. Its light remains bright, but something has changed. The hardest edge of the day is gradually softening. Shadows begin to lengthen. Palm trees stretch dark shapes across dusty paths. The river catches the sunlight and scatters it across moving water. For workers in the fields, this change is welcome. A farmer straightens his back and pauses for a moment. The muscles along his shoulders ache. His hands are rough from years of labor. The soil beneath his feet feels warm. For much of his life, days have followed this pattern. Morning effort. Midday heat. Afternoon fatigue. Evening relief. The rhythm has become as familiar as breathing. Nearby, other workers continue tending crops. The fields are alive with quiet activity. Some clear weeds. Some repair small irrigation channels. Others inspect growing plants for signs of trouble. The work requires attention. A careless mistake today may become a larger problem later. Life beside the Nile depends upon careful observation. Water must move where it is needed. Crops must be protected. Resources must be managed wisely. The farmer bends again and continues. His movements are steady. There is no hurry. Years of experience have taught him the value of patience. Across the countryside, similar scenes unfold beneath the afternoon sun. Villages are connected not only by roads and riverboats, but by shared routines. People wake at similar times. Eat similar foods. Face similar challenges. Rest beneath the same sky. Though many may never meet one another, their lives move together through the same seasonal cycles. In a workshop near the river, a young apprentice wipes sweat from his forehead. The room feels warm. The air barely moves. The smell of clay fills the space. Rows of unfinished pottery stand nearby. Some vessels are tall and narrow. Others are wide and rounded. Each serves a purpose. Storage. Cooking. Transportation. Daily life depends upon countless simple objects. The apprentice studies the work of an older potter. Every movement seems careful. Measured. The older craftsman shapes wet clay with practiced hands. His fingers apply just enough pressure. Not too much. Not too little. The vessel slowly emerges from the spinning clay. The apprentice watches closely. Skills like these cannot be learned from words alone. They must be observed. Repeated. Practiced over many years. Outside the workshop, a donkey passes along the road. Its hooves stir small clouds of dust. Bundles of goods hang from its sides. A merchant walks nearby. The merchant's journey has been long today. The road stretches through open countryside where the sun offers little mercy. His water supply has grown smaller with each passing hour. Still, he continues. Trade forms an important part of life throughout Egypt. Goods move constantly between villages and towns. Not every community produces everything it needs. Some areas provide grain. Others offer fish. Others produce pottery, cloth, or tools. The movement of these goods creates connections across the land. The merchant understands these connections well. He knows which roads become muddy after floods. He knows where travelers often rest. He knows which settlements welcome trade. His knowledge has been built slowly over time, one journey after another. Farther downstream, fishermen continue their work upon the river. The Nile appears calm from a distance. Its surface reflects the sky in gentle patterns of light and shadow. Yet beneath the water, life moves constantly. Fish swim through reeds. Birds search for food along the banks. Insects hover above the surface. The river supports an entire world. A fisherman leans over the edge of his boat. He studies the water carefully. Years of experience have sharpened his attention. He notices subtle changes. Tiny movements. Small disturbances. Clues invisible to less practiced eyes. Fishing requires patience. Hours may pass quietly. The fisherman has grown comfortable with silence. The river teaches that skill. He listens to water touching wood. He listens to wind moving through reeds. He listens to distant birds. The sounds become familiar companions. As afternoon drifts onward, children begin finishing their own responsibilities. Not every child spends the entire day playing. Many help their families in small ways. Some carry supplies. Some assist with animals. Some help prepare food. Others learn trades from parents and relatives. Childhood in ancient Egypt often includes work alongside learning. A young girl walks carefully toward home carrying a small basket. Inside are vegetables gathered earlier in the day. The basket is not heavy, but she carries it with concentration. The road feels warm beneath her sandals. Dust gathers around her ankles. When she reaches home, her mother smiles and takes the basket. Together they begin preparing the evening meal. The household is modest. Mud brick walls surround a small living space. The roof provides shelter from the sun. Clay jars line one wall. Simple tools rest nearby. Nothing appears luxurious. Yet the home offers something deeply important. Security. A place to rest. A place to belong. A place where family members gather at the end of difficult days. Throughout Egypt, countless homes provide this same comfort. As the sun continues descending, shadows grow longer. The landscape slowly changes character. The brightness softens. Colors deepen. The river becomes golden. Birds begin moving toward familiar resting places. The first hints of evening appear. Workers notice immediately. Tired bodies respond to the promise of cooler air. In the fields, conversations become slightly more common. The hardest part of the day is ending. A farmer exchanges a few words with a neighbor. Another worker laughs quietly at a simple remark. Nothing important is discussed. Nothing dramatic occurs. The conversation itself offers comfort. Human beings have always found companionship in shared labor. The understanding that others face similar challenges can make difficult work feel lighter. Near one village, builders continue repairing a wall. The structure protects storage areas used by several families. Mud brick must occasionally be maintained. Rain is uncommon, but time itself creates wear. Cracks appear. Surfaces weaken. Repairs become necessary. The builders work carefully. Fresh mud is mixed. Damaged sections are strengthened. The process is slow. Many aspects of life in ancient Egypt move slowly. Buildings rise slowly. Skills develop slowly. Children grow slowly. Harvests mature slowly. The civilization itself has been shaped by patience. Even the Nile teaches patience through its steady seasonal cycles. As the afternoon approaches its final hours, a gentle breeze begins moving across the countryside. Workers welcome it immediately. The breeze carries the scent of water and vegetation. For a moment, the heat feels less oppressive. Faces lift toward the moving air. Small comforts matter, especially after long hours of effort. In a larger town, market activity begins slowing. Merchants organize remaining goods. Customers complete final purchases. The busiest hours have passed. Still, the market remains an interesting place. Voices mix together. People exchange news. Travelers share stories from distant settlements. Goods from various regions appear side by side. A woman examines woven cloth. A man negotiates for tools. Children watch everything with curiosity. Markets serve not only economic purposes. They also bring communities together. They create opportunities for connection, for information, for conversation. As the day gradually cools, more people begin turning their thoughts toward home. The prospect of rest becomes increasingly appealing. A worker imagines sitting beside family members. A fisherman imagines removing tired sandals. A baker imagines the satisfaction of completing another day's work. The human desire for rest is timeless. Ancient Egyptians knew it well. The body can only work for so many hours. Eventually it asks for relief. Eventually it asks for stillness. The sun lowers further. Its light becomes rich and warm. The river glows like polished metal. The entire landscape seems wrapped in golden color. This is one of the most beautiful times of day. Yet beauty is not something many workers stop to admire directly. They are busy finishing tasks, gathering supplies, preparing to leave. Still, the beauty surrounds them all the same. A farmer lifts his tools. A fisherman secures his boat. A merchant adjusts his bundles. The day is nearly finished. Soon roads will fill with returning workers. Cooking fires will appear. Families will gather. The sounds of labor will slowly give way to the sounds of evening life. For now, however, the final moments of afternoon linger gently over the land. The Nile continues its quiet journey. The breeze moves softly through reeds. Dust hangs in warm air. And across ancient Egypt, ordinary people complete another day of patient, necessary work beneath the fading sun. Evening arrives slowly, like a soft curtain lowering over the land. The heat of the day does not vanish all at once. It lingers in the soil, in the stone, in the wooden beams of houses. But the air above the Nile begins to shift. It grows gentler, easier to breathe. The sun moves closer to the horizon, and everything it touches turns warm and quiet in color. In the fields, the last tasks of the day are completed with steady hands. A farmer ties together bundles of plants, his movements slower now, not from laziness, but from exhaustion that has settled into his body like a familiar weight. His fingers are dusty. His arms feel heavy. Yet he continues with the same patience he has used since morning. Nearby, another worker checks the irrigation channels one final time. Water still moves through them, slow and controlled, guided by careful human effort. A small adjustment is made with a wooden tool. Earth is pressed gently into place. The flow changes slightly, just enough to matter for tomorrow's crops. Nothing in this work feels dramatic. Everything is quiet adjustment. Quiet care. Quiet survival. Across the countryside, people begin walking home. The paths are familiar by now, shaped by countless footsteps over many years. Dust rises softly with each step, then settles again behind them. The sound of sandals against ground becomes a steady rhythm, almost soothing in its repetition. Some walk alone. Others walk in pairs. A few walk in small groups, speaking in low voices. The conversations are never loud at this hour. The body is too tired for noise. Even speech feels slower, softened by fatigue and relief. As they approach their villages, the world changes again. Smoke becomes visible first. Thin lines rising from cooking fires. Then sounds follow. The faint crackle of wood. The distant murmur of families gathering. A child calling out. A dog barking once before falling silent. Life returns in a different form. Not the heavy labor of the fields, but the softer labor of home. Inside one house, a woman prepares food with practiced care. Her movements are slow, not because she is uncertain, but because she has learned to conserve energy after a long day. She sits near a small hearth where embers glow gently. Bread dough rests nearby, already shaped. The air smells of grain and warmth. She places the dough near heat and watches it carefully. Timing matters, even in simple cooking. Too long and it burns. Too short and it remains unfinished. She has learned these small balances over many years. Behind her, the household begins to gather. A child enters first, carrying a small container of water. Then another returns, dust still clinging to their clothing. An older relative sits quietly in a corner, resting in the cooler evening air. No one rushes. There is no need to rush. The day's labor has already been completed. Outside, the sky deepens. Orange softens into deeper shades. Then into violet. Then into the quiet blue of early night. The first stars appear, faint at first, then clearer as the light fades. In ancient Egypt, the sky is never ignored. It is part of daily life. Farmers look at it. Travelers rely on it. Fishermen notice its changes over water. Children point at it without needing to be taught. The sky is a companion, always present, always changing slowly. A fisherman returns home along the riverbank. His steps are unhurried. The weight of his catch rests in woven baskets. It is not a perfect day, but it is enough. Enough to feed his household. Enough to continue. The river behind him reflects the growing darkness of evening. Small waves catch the fading light, then release it again. He pauses for a moment before entering his home. Not for any reason other than habit. A quiet pause between work and rest. Inside many homes, meals are now shared. People sit close together, not because space is limited, but because closeness feels natural after separation during the day. Conversation is soft. Sometimes there is talk of work. Sometimes of weather. Sometimes of nothing at all. Silence is also acceptable. The sound of chewing bread. The passing of water between hands. The quiet settling of tired bodies. These are the sounds of evening. In another part of the village, a scribe finishes recording the day's accounts. His workspace is dim now, lit by a small oil lamp. The light flickers against the walls, casting moving shadows over papyrus and tools. He writes carefully. Each symbol placed with attention. Records must be accurate. Errors can cause problems later. His hand moves slowly, but with certainty. Outside his small space, the world has already shifted into night. But inside, work continues just a little longer. Not because it is required by urgency, but because completion brings peace. When he finally sets down his tool, he sits still for a moment, listening to the quiet. The scribal life may appear different from farming or fishing, but it shares the same rhythm. Work. Focus. Rest. Repeat. As darkness deepens across the land, oil lamps begin to glow more clearly. Small points of light appear in doorways, courtyards, and windows. Each flame is small, but together they give shape to the village at night. Without them, everything would disappear into darkness. With them, life continues gently. A mother sits beside a child who has fallen asleep early. The child's breathing is slow and steady. The woman adjusts a light covering over them. Her movements are careful, almost silent. Outside, the wind moves lightly through palm leaves. The sound is soft, almost like distant breathing. The Nile continues its movement through the night. Unchanged. Unhurried. Unbroken. A young man walks alone along a path near the river. He is not traveling far. Only returning from a small errand. But the night makes every journey feel slightly different. The world is less visible, more felt than seen. He listens to the water as he walks. It is a constant presence. Comforting in its repetition. The river does not change its voice. Only its surroundings change. Insects begin their nighttime sounds. Small, steady rhythms from the reeds and fields. The village is now mostly still. Not silent, but resting. There is a difference. Inside homes, people lie down on woven mats. Bodies finally release the tension held throughout the day. Shoulders sink. Hands loosen. Eyes close more easily now. Sleep arrives without effort. It is not forced. It simply comes. In one home, a father lies awake for a short time before sleep. He listens to the breathing of his family. He thinks briefly about tomorrow. The work that will return. The same fields. The same tools. The same river. But these thoughts do not bring worry. They are simply part of life. Familiar. Expected. Then sleep takes him as well. Outside, the night grows deeper. The stars continue their slow movement overhead. The moon rises higher, casting pale light across rooftops and riverbanks. Shadows lengthen and soften. The world becomes still again. And once more, ancient Egypt rests beneath the endless sky, held gently between river and desert, between labor and sleep, between the quiet ending of one day and the distant beginning of another. Night deepens further now, settling into its quietest form. The village has fully surrendered to sleep, but the world around it remains softly alive. The Nile continues to move through the darkness as it always has, carrying its steady current past sleeping homes and resting fields. Moonlight spreads across the water in pale, broken reflections, shifting gently whenever the surface ripples. Along the riverbanks, reeds sway faintly in the night breeze. Their movement is small, almost invisible, but constant enough to be noticed by anyone still awake. Most are not. Inside mud-brick homes, families lie in simple stillness. Woven mats soften the hard ground. Light coverings rest lightly over tired bodies. The day's exhaustion has settled deep into muscles and bones, and sleep arrives quickly for most. Breathing slows. Shoulders loosen. Thoughts drift away. The village becomes a place of quiet forms and soft shadows. Only a few remain awake. Not many. Just those whose work or habits bring them into the night for a little longer. A guard walks slowly along a path near storage buildings. His steps are unhurried. There is no urgency in his movement, only routine. He listens to the quiet carefully. In ancient Egypt, even silence has meaning. A shift in sound. A distant movement. The faintest disturbance near grain storage. Everything is noticed, even when nothing happens. Tonight, nothing does. The guard continues his slow circuit, passing by walls warmed during the day and now cooling in the night air. Above him, the sky is vast and uninterrupted. Stars scatter across it in patterns known by generations who have always looked upward in the same way. Farmers once used them to mark seasons. Travelers once followed them across deserts. Children still point at them in wonder during quiet moments. The sky belongs to everyone. Yet it belongs to no one. Near the river, a fisherman's boat rests tied to a wooden post. It moves slightly with the water's rhythm. Forward. Back. Forward again. A simple motion repeated endlessly. Inside the boat, nets lie folded and still. The fisherman sleeps nearby, not far from the water that sustains him. His rest is light at first. Fishermen often sleep lightly. Years of listening to the river make the mind attentive even in rest. But tonight is calm. No storms. No urgency. Only the steady sound of water brushing against wood. Farther inland, a small group of travelers sleeps beside the road. They have stopped their journey for the night. Their belongings are gathered close. Donkeys rest with lowered heads. Travel in ancient Egypt often requires stopping wherever safety allows. There are no artificial lights along the roads. Only the natural light of moon and stars. Only the familiarity of well-worn paths. The travelers sleep in silence, their journey paused between one settlement and another. The night continues without interruption. In the village, a child stirs briefly, then settles again. A mother shifts slightly beside them, ensuring the covering remains in place. These small movements are barely noticeable. They belong to the softer side of night. Even sleep has its small rhythms. Outside, the air grows cooler now. Not cold. Just gentle. Comfortable after the heat of the day. This is the hour when the land feels most at ease. The fields are empty. The workshops are quiet. The river flows without resistance. Even the wind seems to move more slowly. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls once. A single sound carried across open space. Then silence returns. Not empty silence, but full silence. The kind that holds everything still. Inside a modest home, an elderly woman lies awake for a short while. Sleep comes more slowly with age. She listens to the familiar sounds around her. The breathing of those nearby. The faint movement of night air through small openings in the wall. The distant rhythm of the river beyond the village. Her thoughts drift gently. Not toward worry. Not toward planning. But toward memory. She recalls mornings long past. Days of work in fields that may now belong to others. Faces of people who once sat beside her. Time passes differently in memory. It feels both near and far at once. Eventually, even memory softens. Her eyes close. And she sleeps. The Nile continues its journey through the darkness. It does not change its pace for anyone. Not for those who sleep beside it. Not for those who work upon it. Not for those who once lived and are now gone. It flows as it always has. Carrying silt. Carrying life. Carrying the quiet history of countless generations who have depended upon it without ever needing to name its importance. In the fields, crops rest beneath the night sky. They do not move. But they are alive. Waiting for morning light. Waiting for water. Waiting for care. The land itself feels patient. As if it understands the rhythm of time more deeply than those who live upon it. Hours pass. Slowly. Softly. Without disturbance. The moon climbs higher, then begins its gradual descent. The stars shift across the sky in patterns too slow for human attention to fully notice. Night reaches its quietest point. The middle of darkness. The stillest moment before dawn begins its distant approach. In homes across the village, sleep deepens. Dreams become less structured. More fluid. Some dream of familiar work. Some of water and fields. Some of nothing they will remember. The body repairs itself in silence. Strength returns little by little. Not in a sudden way. But gently. Like water filling a vessel drop by drop. The village, though still and dark, is not empty. It is resting. Preparing. Holding itself in calm readiness for the return of light. And somewhere beyond the horizon, though still far away, the faintest hint of change begins again. Not yet morning. Not yet movement. Only the earliest suggestion that the night, like all nights before it, will eventually give way to another quiet beginning beside the Nile. The night reaches its deepest calm just before the first hint of morning returns. Everything feels suspended in a quiet stillness, as if the world itself is resting between breaths. The Nile flows on without pause, but even its movement feels softer now, as though the river is aware of the sleeping land on either side of it. Along the banks, the reeds stand motionless. The wind has slowed. Even the insects seem quieter in these hours, their sounds reduced to faint, distant rhythms that blend into the background of the night. Inside the village, sleep continues without interruption. Houses made of mud brick hold the warmth of bodies and the memory of the day's heat. The roofs, flat and simple, rest under the open sky, carrying the weight of silence above them. People sleep in many positions. On their sides. On their backs. Curled slightly against the cooler air of night. Some families sleep close together for warmth and comfort. Others spread out across small courtyards where the air is freer. There is no luxury in these arrangements, but there is familiarity. And that familiarity brings a quiet kind of peace. The guard near the storage buildings completes another slow circuit and pauses for a moment. He looks out across the stillness. Nothing moves except the faint shifting of shadows under moonlight. Everything is in its place. He adjusts his posture slightly, then continues walking. His footsteps are soft against the ground. Even sound seems reluctant to break the night. Farther away, the river reflects the sky like a dark mirror. The stars appear both above and below, divided only by the thin movement of water. It is a sight that has always existed here. Long before written records. Long before stone temples rose from the earth. The river and the sky have always shared this quiet conversation. A fisherman sleeping near his boat turns slightly in his rest. His hand brushes against the net beside him, as if checking it even in sleep. This small gesture speaks of habit more than thought. A life shaped by repetition does not fully release itself. even in dreams. Nearby, a tethered donkey shifts its weight and exhales slowly. The sound is soft and brief. Then stillness returns. In the village, a child briefly opens their eyes. The darkness surrounds them, but it is not frightening. It is familiar. The presence of nearby breathing offers comfort. The child closes their eyes again and drifts back into sleep without effort. Night in ancient Egypt is not a time of fear for most. It is simply another part of life. A necessary pause. A resting place between days of work. Far from the village, the desert stretches outward. Silent dunes and rocky ground extend into vast emptiness. Here, the night feels even deeper. There are no homes. No fires. Only wind that has traveled far and continues moving without destination. Occasionally, a traveler crossing this land would experience nights like this, where the sky feels larger than anywhere else. Where the stars seem close enough to touch. But tonight, even the desert is still. The entire region rests beneath the same sky. As time moves forward, slowly and almost unnoticeably, the first shift begins again. Not yet light. Not yet dawn. Only a subtle change in the quality of darkness. The horizon holds a faint difference now, something so slight it might be missed entirely unless watched carefully. Night is beginning to release its hold. Inside homes, people remain asleep, unaware of this transition. Their bodies continue the quiet work of rest. Repairing. Restoring. Preparing. In a small home near the center of the village, a man stirs briefly. He does not wake fully. Only enough to adjust his position and draw a deeper breath. Then sleep returns. The rhythm of rest continues. Outside, the river remains unchanged in its movement. It neither hastens nor delays. It simply flows. Always forward. Always steady. Its presence is one of the few constants in a world that changes with each season. Fields are planted. Fields are harvested. Floods arrive. Floods recede. But the Nile continues. A companion to every generation. As the deepest part of night begins to loosen its grip, the sky shows the first sign of transformation. A barely visible thinning of darkness in one corner of the horizon. The earliest suggestion that the world will soon awaken again. Still, for now, everything remains quiet. The village continues to sleep. The workers, the farmers, the fishermen, the craftsmen, the children, and the elders all rest together under the same sky. Their lives pause gently within the same shared silence. And in this silence, there is no urgency. Only continuity. Only breath. Only the soft presence of time passing slowly over ancient Egypt, as it always has, and as it always will, beneath the endless flow of the Nile. The final hour of night holds a special kind of stillness. It is quieter than the hours before it, as if even darkness has grown tired and settled into rest. The Nile continues its steady movement, but the sound of it is almost imagined now, more felt than heard. The river passes through the land like a slow breath that never ends. Along its banks, the world remains asleep. Villages rest without interruption. Homes sit close together, their shapes softened by moonlight and shadow. The outlines of roofs, walls, and doorways blend gently into the night. Nothing feels sharp anymore. Everything is softened by darkness and distance. Inside one home, a family sleeps in close silence. A child is curled against a parent. An elder rests nearby, breathing slow and steady. A simple mat lies beneath them all, worn from years of use, shaped by countless nights of rest. There is comfort in this repetition. Comfort in knowing where to sleep, where to wake, where to return each night after labor. Outside, the air is at its coolest. Not cold, but gentle enough that the memory of daytime heat feels distant now. A faint mist may form near the river in some places, rising softly before disappearing into the air. The world feels suspended. Between night and morning. Between rest and waking. The guard near the storage buildings pauses again at the edge of his route. He looks toward the horizon. Something subtle is changing. It is not light yet. Not fully. But the darkness no longer feels absolute. There is a softness to it now, as if the night is slowly loosening its hold. He remains still for a moment longer. Then resumes his slow walk. Habit continues even in the quietest hours. Near the river, a boat rocks gently against its tether. The movement is small, almost unnoticeable. The water beneath it carries faint reflections of the fading night sky. Stars still shine above, but a few now appear less sharp, as though the sky itself is preparing to change. Insects that filled the earlier night with sound begin to quiet. Their rhythm slow. Some disappear into stillness entirely. Others continue faintly, but more distantly, as if retreating with the night itself. In the village, sleep deepens for many. Dreams soften. Thoughts fade. The body rests more fully now than at any other point in the night. Muscles relax completely. Breathing becomes even and slow. This is the most restorative part of sleep. The part that carries people through the demands of another day. Far beyond the village, where the desert stretches endlessly, the horizon begins to show the faintest shift. A line so subtle it could almost be mistaken for imagination. But it is real. Morning is preparing itself again. Not yet arriving. Only approaching. A traveler sleeping under the open sky in that distant land stirs slightly, sensing the change without understanding it. He turns his head and settles again. The desert remains quiet. The Nile Valley remains quiet. The entire land rests beneath the same slow transformation. In a small home, a woman wakes briefly before dawn. She does not rise. Only opens her eyes for a moment. The room is still dark, but it feels different than before. Less heavy. More open. She listens. There is nothing urgent. Only the familiar sounds of sleeping family members nearby. She closes her eyes again and returns to rest. The night continues for a little longer. But it is no longer at its deepest point. Something has shifted. Very slowly. Very gently. The sky above the river begins to lighten in the far distance. Not enough to illuminate the land. Not enough to end the night. Only enough to suggest what is coming. Ancient Egypt, like every place touched by the river, lives within this rhythm. Night into day. Day into night. A cycle that does not break. Only turns. In the village, nothing moves yet. But everything is ready. The farmers will rise again. The fishermen will return to the water. The craftsmen will open their workshops. The scribes will take up their tools. The children will follow their families into another day. For now, they remain asleep. Held gently in the final moments of darkness. And as the faintest glow of approaching morning spreads slowly across the eastern edge of the world, the Nile continues its endless journey, carrying the quiet promise of another ordinary day in ancient Egypt. The first light of morning arrives without sound. It does not announce itself. It does not rush. It simply appears, slowly spreading across the edge of the horizon, softening the deep blue of night into a lighter shade that almost feels like breath returning to the world. The Nile catches it first. A thin line of pale gold touches the water, breaking into gentle reflections that move with the current. The river seems to awaken before the land does, as if it has always been the first to notice the coming day. Along the banks, the village remains mostly asleep. But the air has changed. It feels different now. More open. Less heavy. A few early stirrings begin inside homes. A hand shifts beneath a linen covering. A child turns slightly in sleep. A door creaks faintly as someone steps outside for the first time in the early morning. The guard near the storage buildings pauses at the edge of his final night circuit. He looks toward the east. The change is undeniable now. Dawn is not distant anymore. It is arriving. He adjusts his stance and begins to walk more slowly, as if acknowledging the transition between night and day. Near the river, mist rises in thin, fragile layers. It drifts upward for a moment, then dissolves into the cooling air. The water beneath it moves with quiet certainty, carrying reflections of the brightening sky. Birds begin to return. At first, only a few. Then more. Their calls are soft at first, scattered and uncertain, but they grow steadier as the light strengthens. The village responds gradually. Not all at once. Not in a rush. One household door opens. Then another. Then several more. People step into the early morning air, still carrying the heaviness of sleep in their movements. Faces are calm, unhurried. No one speaks loudly. The world is still too new for noise. A woman gathers water from a clay jar placed outside during the night. The water is cool. Almost refreshing. She holds it for a moment before carrying it inside. This simple act marks the beginning of another day. Inside homes, bread preparation begins again. Not yet the full work of baking, but the early steps. Dough is checked. Fires are rekindled. Tools are brought out. The smell of ash and wood begins to mix with the clean air of morning. Across the village, life slowly resumes its rhythm. A farmer steps outside and looks at the sky. The light is soft now, not yet strong enough to bring heat. This is the most forgiving part of the day. The air is gentle. The land feels calm. Soon, work will begin again in the fields. But for a few moments, there is stillness. A fisherman walks toward the river, carrying his net over one shoulder. He moves slowly, adjusting to wakefulness. The water ahead of him reflects the brightening sky. He pauses at the edge, as he often does. A quiet moment before labor begins. He watches the river for a few seconds. Then steps forward. The boat awaits him. Elsewhere, craftsmen begin opening their workshops. Doors are unlatched. Tools are arranged. Clay is prepared. Wood is inspected. The first sounds of labor return, but softly, without urgency. Even work in ancient Egypt begins gently in the morning. Not with force, but with preparation. Children wake more slowly. Some are already active, helping parents or carrying small tasks. Others remain in the quiet warmth of sleep a little longer. A mother gently wakes a child with a soft touch. There is no rush. Only the natural return of the day. Outside, the sun is still low, just beginning to rise beyond the horizon. Its light spreads gradually across the land, touching rooftops, fields, and riverbanks. Shadows grow shorter. Colors become clearer. The world returns to definition. The Nile glows again, not with the deep silver of night, but with the warm promise of daylight. The river continues its endless movement, unchanged by the transition. It has seen this moment countless times. And it will see it again. In the fields, farmers begin to gather their tools. The day's labor is about to start. Not yet at full intensity. But soon. Always soon. The cycle continues as it always has. Night into morning. Rest into work. Silence into motion. Across ancient Egypt, life awakens fully now. Not suddenly, but steadily. Like a breath taken after long sleep. And as the first full light of day settles across the land, the ordinary world of farmers, fishermen, craftsmen, scribes, and families returns once more to its quiet rhythm beside the eternal Nile. Morning settles fully over the Nile Valley, gentle and clear. The sun is now above the horizon, spreading warm light across fields, rooftops, and river water. The last traces of night have faded, but the calm feeling of early morning remains. It is a soft beginning to another day that will eventually grow heavy with work and heat. For now, everything feels balanced. Alive, but not rushed. In the village, movement becomes steady and familiar. People are no longer waking one by one. Now they are already awake, already beginning their tasks. The transition from sleep to labor has completed without noise or ceremony. It happens every day in the same quiet way, as if the village and the sun understand each other without words. A farmer walks toward the fields with his tools resting on his shoulder. The ground beneath him is cooler than it will be later. His steps are slow but certain. He does not think about the entire day ahead. That would be too large, too heavy. Instead, he thinks in smaller parts. The next field. The next task. The next movement of water and soil. This is how most people live here. Not in long plans, but in short, steady moments. Near the river, a fisherman pushes his boat into the water. The Nile greets him as it always does, with gentle motion and steady current. The boat shifts slightly as it leaves the shore, then finds balance again. He adjusts his net and looks ahead. The river is already bright now, reflecting the full morning sky. It will guide him as it always has. On the riverbank, a woman spreads cloth to dry in the sunlight. The fabric catches the breeze, moving softly like thin wings. She checks it carefully, turning pieces when needed. The morning light helps her see clearly, revealing dust, wear, and color more easily than the dimness of night. Nearby, children move through narrow paths carrying small tasks for their families. One carries water. Another carries a bundle of grain. Another walks beside an adult, learning the rhythm of the day simply by following. Their steps are lighter than those of the workers. Not yet shaped fully by long hours of labor. In workshops, craftsmen are fully active now. The potter's wheel turns steadily. The carpenter measures wood with careful attention. The weaver's hands move in repetitive patterns that have been practiced for years. Each workshop produces something essential. Nothing here exists for decoration alone. Everything serves a purpose. Everything becomes part of daily life somewhere else in the village or beyond it. The sound of work fills the air gradually. Not loud, but continuous. A steady background rhythm of human effort. In the fields, the farmer begins his main work for the day. The soil is still slightly cool from the night. He bends and begins preparing the ground. His movements are familiar, almost automatic, shaped by years of repetition. Around him, others work in similar silence. Sometimes a few words are spoken. A greeting. A simple instruction. A comment about the weather or the soil. Then silence returns. The Nile remains nearby, always present. Its presence shapes everything. Water channels must be maintained. Timing must be respected. Fields depend on its flow. Life depends on it completely. Without the river, there is only desert. With it, there is civilization. But for those living here, it is not spoken of in grand terms. It is simply understood. The river is life. That is all. As the sun rises higher, the day begins to warm. Not yet harsh, but noticeable. The softness of early morning slowly begins to fade into the stronger light of midday. People adjust without thinking. Clothing shifts. Work slows slightly in intensity. Water becomes more important. Shade becomes more valuable. In a small home, a woman prepares food for midday. Bread is checked again. Simple ingredients are arranged. The smell of cooking begins to return, faint but steady. Food in ancient Egypt is not separate from the rhythm of work. It is part of it. A continuation of effort. Something earned through labor and shared at intervals throughout the day. At the river, a fisherman pauses briefly to rest his arms. The net feels heavier after repeated use. He looks out across the water for a moment. There is no urgency in his gaze. Only patience. The Nile does not demand speed. It rewards consistency. Elsewhere, a merchant prepares to travel again. His goods are secured carefully. His path is familiar, but never identical. Roads shift slightly with weather and time. He will adjust as needed. Travel here is always a balance between planning and improvisation. Between knowledge and experience. Between expectation and reality. As the morning continues, the village becomes fully absorbed in its daily rhythm. Work is no longer beginning. It is underway. The early calm has transitioned into steady activity. And yet, beneath everything, there remains a quiet sense of order. A sense that life is following a path that has been walked countless times before. Farmers working fields. Fishermen following the river. Craftsmen shaping materials. Families maintaining homes. Children learning by observing. Elders watching the rhythm of life continue. All of it connected. All of it necessary. And all of it unfolding beneath the same sun that rises over Egypt every day, just as it has for generations beyond memory. The Nile flows beside it all, unchanged. Carrying time forward in its own quiet way. And as the morning settles fully into the land, ancient Egypt continues its ordinary but important life, steady and unbroken, between river, sky, and earth. Late morning moves across the land with a steady warmth. The sun is higher now, and its light is stronger, but still not at its harshest point. Shadows are shorter. Colors are clearer. The Nile shines with a bright, shifting surface that reflects both sky and movement at once. By this hour, the village is fully alive in work. The quiet softness of early morning has become steady labor. In the fields, farmers continue their tasks with patient rhythm. The soil has warmed slightly under the sun. Dust rises and settles again with each step. Hands move through earth, through tools, through water channels that guide the life of crops. Everything depends on small adjustments. A slight shift in water flow. A careful removal of weeds. A repaired edge in a canal. Nothing dramatic. Nothing sudden. Only constant attention. Nearby, a group of workers pauses briefly beneath a thin patch of shade. The shade is not large, but it is enough. They drink water in small amounts, conserving it carefully. No one speaks much. Energy is saved for labor. Rest is short, but necessary. Then they return to work without complaint. This pattern repeats across the countryside. Work. Pause. Work again. In the village, activity continues in different forms. A potter inspects rows of vessels left to dry in the sun. The heat helps strengthen them, but it also requires caution. Too much exposure in the wrong moment can cause damage. He walks slowly among them, checking each piece. His hands hover near the clay but rarely touch. Experience guides him more than instruction ever could. Each vessel carries hours of earlier effort. Each one must survive its transformation into a finished object. Nearby, a carpenter works under partial shade. He adjusts a wooden frame, checking alignment with careful eyes. Wood is less forgiving than clay in some ways, but more stable in others. It holds shape. It carries structure. It becomes furniture, tools, and supports for daily life. The carpenter wipes sweat from his forehead and continues. Across the village, a weaver sits in steady motion. Her hands repeat the same movements again and again. Thread crossing thread. Pattern forming slowly. Her work demands patience above all else. A single mistake can disrupt an entire section of cloth. So she works carefully, without haste. Outside, the river remains a constant presence. Boats move along its surface. Some carry goods. Some carry people. Some simply drift as part of daily travel. The Nile serves as the main pathway of the land. It connects distant places without effort. It makes movement possible in a world where land travel is often slower and more difficult. At one landing, a merchant unloads goods with help from a laborer. The weight is distributed carefully. Nothing is rushed. Goods are valuable. Even simple items require effort to replace. The merchant speaks briefly with another traveler, exchanging news from distant settlements. Information travels along the river just as goods do. Slowly. Steadily. Through many hands. In a nearby home, food preparation continues for midday. Bread is placed near heat. Water is poured and measured. Simple meals are prepared not for celebration, but for continuation. To sustain energy through the day. A child sits nearby watching quietly. Learning without formal instruction. Observing how tasks are done. These small lessons become the foundation of future life. Everything is learned by watching others. By doing. By repeating. Outside, the heat begins to strengthen as the sun climbs higher. The transition toward midday is gradual but noticeable. The air becomes heavier. Movement slows slightly. People adjust their pace naturally. This is not a moment of stopping. Only a moment of adaptation. A farmer straightens and looks toward the sky for a brief moment. The sun is bright now. The field stretches wide in all directions. Work continues, but there is awareness of the heat. Of the need to pace oneself. Of the importance of water and rest in small amounts. In the distance, the Nile glimmers like a long ribbon of light. It does not change. It does not hurry. It simply flows. Always present. Always moving. Always the center of everything. In the village, a few people begin to move more slowly. Not from weakness, but from understanding. The day has entered its stronger phase. The hardest hours are approaching. Yet there is no resistance to this reality. Only acceptance. Life here has always been shaped by cycles. Heat and coolness. Work and rest. Morning and evening. Flood and dryness. Nothing is permanent except change itself. As midday approaches, the entire landscape feels steady and alive at once. Workers continue their tasks. Families continue their routines. The river continues its journey. And beneath the wide, bright sky of ancient Egypt, ordinary life carries on with quiet endurance, shaped by the land, the sun, and the endless presence of the Nile. The sun reaches its highest point and settles there, filling the land with steady, unwavering light. Midday in ancient Egypt is not a moment of rest. It is a moment of endurance. The world does not stop, but everything becomes slower, more deliberate, as if the heat itself asks for patience. Across the fields, workers feel this shift in their bodies. The air is heavier now. The ground is warmer beneath their feet. Even simple movements require more effort than they did in the morning. A farmer pauses near a canal and wipes his hands against his clothing. The fabric is already damp with sweat and dust. He takes a small drink of water, careful not to use too much. Water is never wasted. Not in a land where every drop carries importance. Around him, others continue working, but with a quieter pace. The noise of earlier hours has softened. There is less conversation now. Less movement between groups. Only the steady rhythm of labor remains. Digging. Carrying. Adjusting. Repairing. The field is still alive with work, but it has entered a slower heartbeat. Near the river, the breeze is faint but persistent. It moves across the surface of the Nile, creating small ripples that break the sunlight into shifting patterns. The river offers a small relief from the heat, though it cannot fully escape it. Fishermen often find this time of day challenging. Some choose to rest in shaded areas along the bank. Others continue, relying on experience to guide them through slower fishing conditions. One fisherman sits beneath a palm tree, repairing a section of net that tore earlier. His hands move carefully through the fibers. Each knot must be secure. Each section must hold. The work is quiet and repetitive. His eyes remain focused, but his breathing is calm. Even in heat, there is rhythm. Even in discomfort, there is familiarity. In the village, movement continues but with reduced intensity. Market activity slows slightly. Merchants adjust their goods to avoid direct sunlight. Some cover items with cloth. Others wait for later hours when activity will increase again. A woman walks carefully along a narrow path carrying a container of water. Her steps are steady but slow. She avoids unnecessary movement. Every journey is planned efficiently at this time of day. There is no energy to waste. In a shaded workshop, a craftsman continues shaping wood. The shade offers only partial relief, but it is enough to make work possible. He checks measurements again and again. Precision matters more when fatigue sets in. A mistake in heat is harder to correct than a mistake in cool air. Nearby, the sound of chiseling wood continues at a measured pace. Not fast. Not slow. Just steady. In another part of the village, a group of workers rests briefly under a stone wall. The wall holds cooler air, offering temporary comfort. They sit in silence, drinking water in small amounts. No one speaks much. The quiet feels natural. Even necessary. After a short rest, they will return to work again. This pattern continues throughout the day. Work followed by brief pause. Then work again. At the center of the village, bread is prepared for midday meals. The smell of baking dough spreads through nearby homes. It is a familiar scent. One that signals nourishment, stability, and continuity. A mother removes bread from near the heat and sets it aside to cool. The child nearby watches closely, learning through observation. These simple acts repeat every day. And yet they remain important each time. Because each day requires new effort. Each day requires food. Each day requires care. Outside, the sun remains strong and unchanging. The sky is clear. The light is sharp. The land appears still in its brightness, even though countless small movements continue beneath it. A farmer looks briefly toward the horizon. The fields stretch far and open. He knows the day is far from over. But he also knows it will eventually shift again. Heat will soften. Shadows will grow longer. Evening will return. This understanding does not rush him. It simply exists in the background of thought. At the river, a boat moves slowly along the current. The movement is gentle, controlled by both human effort and natural flow. The Nile carries it forward without resistance. It always has. And it always will. As midday continues, the entire landscape remains in its most intense but steady phase. Work continues. Rest happens in small moments. Life adapts constantly without breaking its rhythm. There is no pause in existence here. Only adjustment. Only continuation. And beneath the bright, unyielding sun of ancient Egypt, the ordinary life of its people carries on, shaped by effort, patience, and the endless flow of the river that binds everything together. The sun begins its slow descent, almost imperceptibly at first. Midday has passed, though the heat still lingers in the land like a held breath that has not yet fully released. The light remains strong, but something subtle has changed in its angle. Shadows, once small and tight beneath objects, begin to stretch again, lengthening quietly across the ground. The fields feel this change before anything else. A farmer notices it while standing near a canal. The water still flows steadily, guided by careful hands and simple tools, but the air no longer feels quite as heavy as it did at the peak of the day. There is still effort in every movement, but the edge of exhaustion begins to loosen slightly. Work continues, as it always does. But now it carries a faint sense of nearing completion. Nearby, other workers adjust their pace without speaking about it. There is no need for words. The body understands the rhythm of the day better than language ever could. Tasks are still completed, but with less strain. With a quiet awareness that the hardest part has already passed. In the village, the midday stillness slowly shifts into gentle activity again. A few merchants reopen their stalls after a short rest in shade. Cloth is uncovered. Simple goods are arranged once more. People begin to move between spaces again, not yet in large numbers, but steadily increasing as the day cools. A woman walks through a narrow path carrying a woven basket. Her steps are lighter than they were at midday. The sun no longer presses as heavily on her shoulders. She passes by a wall where the stone still holds warmth from earlier hours, though even that begins to fade. In a small workshop, a potter examines vessels left to dry earlier in the day. He moves carefully between them. Some are nearly ready for firing. Others still need time. He checks each one with quiet attention, ensuring none have cracked under heat or drying stress. His work continues even as the day changes, because clay does not follow human schedules. It follows its own slow process. Nearby, a carpenter resumes shaping a piece of wood that was set aside earlier. The tool marks are precise. The structure begins to take a clearer form. He pauses occasionally, not from fatigue alone, but to ensure accuracy. As light shifts, so must attention. Across the river, fishermen begin to feel the return of more favorable conditions. The water reflects a softer light now, less harsh than the midday glare. A man standing in his boat adjusts his net, preparing for another attempt. He has spent part of the day resting, conserving strength for this later period when the river becomes more active again. The Nile changes subtly with the hours. Morning brings clarity. Midday brings stillness. Evening brings movement again. Those who live beside it learn these patterns without needing to name them. On the riverbank, a group of children plays quietly in the shade. Their energy returns as the heat lessens. They move with small bursts of laughter and short pauses. Even play follows the rhythm of the land. Nearby, an elder watches them from a seated position against a wall. His presence is calm, almost blending into the background of the afternoon. He observes the return of energy in younger generations. A cycle he has seen many times. And will see many more times before his own quiet days end. In the fields, workers begin to think more frequently of evening. Not as something immediate, but as something approaching with certainty. Water is shared again in small amounts. Tools are lifted and set down with slightly less effort than before. The shift is not dramatic. It is gradual. Like the turning of a slow wheel. The sun continues its descent. The sky remains bright, but the angle of light changes the entire feeling of the land. Colors soften. The harshness of earlier hours begins to fade. Even dust in the air looks different now, illuminated in a gentler way. A farmer straightens and looks across the field. The work is not yet finished, but it is nearing a natural pause point. His body feels the accumulation of the day's effort. Tired, but not breaking. Worn, but still steady. Nearby, another worker gathers tools into a bundle. Not because the day has ended, but because certain tasks are complete. This preparation for ending is part of daily life. Nothing stops suddenly. Everything transitions. In the village, cooking fires begin to reappear. Not yet for full evening meals, but in preparation. Smoke rises in thin lines again, drifting into the warming air of late afternoon. The smell of food begins to return slowly. A reminder that rest will come. That family will gather. That the day will soon soften into evening once more. At the river, a boat drifts closer to shore. The fisherman inside looks toward the land, gauging timing without urgency. He knows the patterns well. There is still time before full night. Still time before complete rest. But the direction of the day is now clear. Everything is moving toward evening. Across ancient Egypt, life continues its steady rhythm beneath the lowering sun. Work is still present. But it is no longer at its hardest point. The land begins to breathe differently. And as shadows grow longer across fields, roads, and riverbanks, the world slowly prepares itself for the quieter hours that always follow the heat of the day. Part 14, the late afternoon light settles gently across the land. It is no longer the sharp, demanding brightness of midday. It has softened into something warmer, more forgiving. The sun sits lower now, casting long shadows that stretch across fields, paths, and the slow-moving surface of the Nile. The world begins to feel wider again. Less compressed by heat. More open in space and sound. In the fields, the final stretch of work continues, but the energy has changed. A farmer gathers the last bundles from a section of land, his movements slower, but steadier in a different way. The urgency of earlier hours has faded, replaced by a calm focus on completion. Nearby, other workers finish tasks that began in the morning. Water channels are checked one last time. Tools are cleaned of soil. Small repairs are made where needed. Everything is brought toward order. Not rushed. Not delayed. just completed at its natural pace. A soft breeze moves across the fields. It carries the scent of dry earth and river water. For the first time since early morning, the air feels truly easier to breathe. The relief is subtle, but noticeable. Workers pause more frequently now. Not because of exhaustion alone, but because the day itself is loosening its grip. At the river, the Nile reflects the changing sky with deepening gold and faint hints of orange. Boats move more freely again as conditions improve with the cooling air. A fisherman pushes off from the bank, his net already prepared. He does not hurry. There is no need. The river rewards patience more than speed. Each movement of water feels steady and familiar. The fisherman watches carefully, as always. The river is never the same twice, and yet it is always known. In the village, activity begins to shift more visibly toward evening life. Smoke rises more consistently from cooking fires. Paths that were quieter during the heat of midday begin to fill again. People return from fields, workshops, and riverbanks in increasing numbers. Their steps are slower than in the morning, but lighter than during the height of the day. Fatigue is present, but it is accompanied by relief. A woman arranges food near a low fire, preparing the evening meal. Her hands move with practiced ease. The rhythm of cooking is as familiar to her as walking or breathing. Nearby, children return from small tasks, their energy reappearing as the air cools. Their voices are softer than morning play, but more present than midday silence. Even the village itself feels like it is waking again in a different way. Not from sleep, but from strain. In a shaded corner of a workshop, a craftsman sets down his tools for a moment and looks outward. The light entering the space is no longer harsh. It is angled and warm. It makes the edges of objects softer. He breathes more easily than he did earlier in the day. Work will continue, but only for a short while longer. He knows this without needing to think about it. Across the settlement, similar awareness spreads quietly. Not spoken. Not planned. Just understood. The day is moving toward its final phase. At the river, a small group of people gathers water for the evening. The movement is calm and steady. Containers are filled and carried with care. The water feels cooler now than it did earlier in the day. A small comfort, but an important one. Farther along the bank, a boat rests gently against a tether. Its motion is slow, matching the rhythm of the water. The fisherman inside it sits quietly for a moment before securing his tools. He looks out across the river. The sun is now lower, touching the surface of the Nile at a sharper angle. The water glows with layered light. Gold. Amber. Soft reflections of fading day. In the fields, the final workers begin to gather their tools. There is no rush to leave, but there is no reason to stay longer either. The work is done for now. Tomorrow will bring it again. But not yet. For this moment, there is only the transition. The long movement from labor to rest. From effort to stillness. A farmer walks slowly along a familiar path toward the village. His body feels the full weight of the day. Muscles tired. Hands dusty. Clothing worn with heat and movement. But there is also a quiet satisfaction in the completion of work. The land has been tended. The tasks have been fulfilled. Life can continue. As he approaches the village, the sounds of evening grow clearer. Cooking fires crackle. Voices carry more freely now. The rhythm of home begins to reassert itself over the rhythm of labor. Inside homes, preparations for evening meals continue. Bread is warmed again. Simple dishes are arranged. Families begin to gather more fully. The separation of the day slowly dissolves. What was divided by work begins to come together again through shared space and food. The sun continues its descent. Shadows lengthen further. The sky begins to shift toward deeper tones. Not yet night, but no longer full day. It is the in-between time. One of the most peaceful parts of the entire cycle. Across ancient Egypt, ordinary life moves gently into evening. Work fades without resistance. Rest approaches without urgency. And the Nile continues flowing beside it all, carrying the quiet memory of the day forward into the coming night. Evening settles over ancient Egypt like a slow, gentle curtain. The last light of the sun lingers across the Nile, touching the water in soft bands of gold that gradually thin and fade. The fields grow quieter now. The roads soften beneath returning footsteps. The village, once filled with the weight of labor, begins to return to the calm shape of home. This is the hour when the world feels unburdened. Not because work has disappeared, but because it has been set down. Fires glow more steadily now inside small courtyards and homes. The smoke rises in thin, peaceful lines into the cooling air. The smell of bread returns again, along with cooked grains, simple vegetables, and fish gathered from the river earlier in the day. Families sit together without hurry. There is no urgency in their voices. Only presence. Only shared quiet. A farmer returns from the fields and washes dust from his hands near a clay basin. The water is cooler now, drawn from storage that has rested through the day. He sits for a moment before entering his home, allowing the weight of the day to settle into stillness. Inside, he joins his family. Food is shared. Not in abundance, but in enough. Enough to restore strength. Enough to bring comfort. Enough to end the day gently. Across the village, similar moments unfold in countless homes. A fisherman sets aside his tools and listens to the soft movement of the river nearby. A craftsman closes his workshop and steps into the evening air. A scribe extinguishes his lamp and lets the quiet of completed work settle around him. Children fall asleep early, their bodies tired from small tasks and long hours of growing. Elders sit in silence, watching the final colors of the sky fade beyond rooftops and palm trees. The Nile continues its movement beside all of it. Unchanged. Unhurried. Endless. It carries the reflection of the first stars as they appear one by one above the horizon. The sky deepens into night once again. But this night feels different only in the way all nights feel different from days. It is not an ending. Only a pause. A resting place between cycles. As darkness returns fully, the village grows still. Homes settle into quiet. Bodies rest on woven mats. Breathing slows. Thoughts drift away. Sleep arrives gently, as it always does. Outside, the river continues flowing through the dark land. Fields rest. Roads empty. Workshops fall silent. And the great rhythm of ancient Egypt continues without interruption, as it has for generations beyond memory. A rhythm of labor and rest. Of heat and coolness. Of morning and evening. Of life lived close to the land and the water that sustains it. The night deepens. Stars move slowly across the sky. And the world becomes quiet once more. Not empty. Not finished. But at peace. The ordinary lives of ancient Egypt settle into sleep beside the Nile, held gently in darkness, as the river continues its eternal journey through time, carrying the day away and welcoming the next one that will come without fail. And in that quiet ending, there is only stillness. Only breath. Only the soft, endless presence of a world that never truly stops, but only rests, again and again, beneath the ancient sky.